Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Fraud Michael Skiba here. I would like to welcome you to the third episode of DFTV, Dr. Fraud TV, WTF, What the Fraud series. So we have another exciting episode for you today, talking about some exciting cases, have some very prestigious guests here today. So very excited to have you here. Now, before we get started, a couple quick things about DFTV. So when this was launched about a month ago, the vision was to discuss fraud and scams from around the world, and the platform has just expanded. So, just from feedback from you guys, we're exploring different areas. We're looking at different types of scams, and really what we're looking to do is a couple things. We're looking at spreading the word on fraud for organizations and for the public to increase awareness. Give you guys some preventative tips, and also to have some fun. So we are exploring different types of fraud from around the world. So that being said, please continue to send me suggestions. If there's any type of scam or fraud, no matter where you are in the world, that you think is worth looking into, please let me know. We're booking now into September, so into the fall session. So definitely let me know. We'll get some things on the books, but definitely keep in touch with us between now and then. Now, also throughout this chat or throughout this session, please chat with us. We want engagement. We want to talk to you guys. Please put some questions in the comment section. I already have a bunch of them that you guys have sent me ahead of time, so this is great. So definitely keep engaged with us throughout this half an hour. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our guests today. So we're going to be talking about a really trending topic, and that is unemployment and workers' comp fraud. So we have the case of the out-of-work scam artist that we caught on tape, and we have two of the leading experts in this area with us today. So I would like to extend a warm welcome to Mario Pecoraro. He is the founder and CEO of Alliance Risk Group, which is an organization in upstate New York focusing on background screening and insurance fraud investigations. They also do claim handling and adjusting services. Now, even though they are in New York, they provide services pretty much domestically. Mario also has extensive experience. He's an author of 2 books and is a regular speaker and media contributor. So, Mario, welcome to the show.
Michael, aka Dr. Fraud, thanks so much for having us here today. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to be here remotely and part of your organization today. So thank you, Mike.
Fantastic. And also, too, we have Sonny Bollart. So Sonny has over 20 years robust financial services experience. He also, in his current role, he heads up the Special Investigations Unit and Special Projects at Alliance Risk Group. So very, very cool title. So, and he's been in that role for 5 years. So Sonny, welcome to the show as well.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's great to be here. I'm excited about the show. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's chat a little bit. We're gonna tackle two trending areas right now, and that is workers' comp fraud and unemployment fraud. So I think you can't go a day without seeing something in your MSN feed or any news wire about unemployment fraud and workers' comp fraud. It's just so rampant. And some of the disturbing things about these topics, when we talk about the exposure, right, of workers' comp fraud, we all know, it's such a high exposure type of fraud. Statistics I've seen show that workers' comp fraud costs the public about $7.2 billion annually. That's billion. It's incredible. And I think too, the percentage of claims. I've seen studies show anywhere from 5 to 10% of all claims. And that's incredible, right? Considering the volume of claims that some of your clients see. It's immense, right?
Yeah, it's amazing what we're seeing out there, and unfortunately, it's across all spectrums and all industries. So fraud has no boundaries, unfortunately.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit now. You guys obviously have had a lot of experience in this area, in your insurance fraud investigative background and working on these cases. So let's talk about a specific case. The caught on tape version that we've been exploring, or we're going to explore this week. So Sonny, maybe you can expand a little bit on this specific case. Give us a little background on it. And we're actually going to run some clips too, and I never get tired of seeing these clips. I just don't. So we're going to run these for you. But Sonny, maybe you can give us a little bit of background on this.
Absolutely, happy to. And like you said, Michael, I love watching these clips as well, because it's what we do. It's why we're here. So yeah, as you both said, there's numerous fraud cases out there, and we have this particular individual. It's a 38-year-old female. A municipal worker, sedentary job. This is also a workers' comp case, and alleging a right knee injury and also a back injury. So, we work with our client. We were assigned to conduct surveillance on her, and I'm not sure if you want to show the video now, or you want me to elaborate more on the case, or so. Yeah, let me do that, Mike. Let me just say that. So we have this particular subject. We were aware of a medical appointment, so we strategized our surveillance around a medical appointment. And I just want to add that we just don't send our investigators in the field. There's things that we do behind the scenes. We gather intelligence on subject. There's things that we can do in-house, but also there's other methods of gaining intelligence. So we're just not wasting clients' money. We're just not, sitting out there burning hours. So I just wanted to add those things before we get into the video clip.
Right. I mean, it's important to know. It's a good point, because obviously, we're seeing a very small piece of clip, but knowing that there's hours and hours that went into work ahead of that. So we're seeing the highlight reel, as we call it. So. Right. Absolutely, no, definitely worth noting. So let me try to show this video here. And again, I never get tired of seeing these. So let's see here.
Okay. Yep. So here we have the subject entering the medical building with her right knee brace on, and she has a cane in her hand. And as you see the video, you'll see that she's hobbling and really playing it up as this right knee injury. And the video clip doesn't do justice on how she's performing, I like to say. And then I believe there's a video clip of her walking out as well. If you can show that, Mike.
Yeah, this is after, right?
Yeah, that might be her carrying. This is actually at the residence. So just to back up a little bit, she was we got her walking out of the medical office. Limping, carrying the cane, using the cane as well. And then I think Mike's going to show a video clip of her on the same day.
Carrying child.
Carrying child. Yeah, here we are. Wow. Perfect, right? Carrying the child, walking normal, no cane. You can clearly see the same clothes. It was probably about a half hour later than the medical appointment. And she's acting how she probably normally acts, other than when she's planning up for the medical appointment.
Right. So this was now how what was the time distance or time frame between these two? She said it was the same day, so it was
2.5 hours. She left a medical appointment. We had our investigator follow her to the store. So there's a time elapse between this, the medical appointment and the store, and then right afterwards, she's walking out of the car carrying her child.
Okay.
No cane. And then you'll later see her actually walking out same way, no cane. This is actually on a different. Oh, there's a good picture of her limping with the cane.
She seems to be walking pretty quickly, although she's limping, Sonny, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This was actually a different medical appointment day, and then on this day we actually observed her carrying groceries into the house with no cane.
Yeah, let's try to show that one quickly here.
So as Michael's pulling that up, Sonny, over how many different days and time periods was this? Was this over a couple weeks, or was this over a couple days? What kind of time period from the time we started to the time this came through?
This was well, it was within a month of of gathering all the video clips, because she had different scheduled medical appointments. So it was March and April timeframe.
Okay. Right.
But the key though is that we got it on multiple days of her acting this way, and then the key also is how she was acting, obviously walking into the medical appointment, and then how she act differently under normal circumstances, normal daily living, I guess I would say. So with all that video intelligence that we gathered for our client, this actually ended up being a fraud finding through the New York State Workers' Comp Board.
Fantastic.
It was a very, very successful case all the way around for.
And just to play on Sonny's point, so when we talk about a fraud finding in New York, particularly, we work throughout the U.S., but in New York, there's a civil element of fraud, which is a New York State Workers' Comp Board, and then there's a criminal element of fraud, which is generally the Inspector General's office, or sometimes it's the Department of Financial Services. And so, unfortunately, for employers that are wronged or defrauded, the civil aspect is one piece, and monetary, securing those monies back is not an option on the civil side in most cases. And unfortunately, unless they decide to pursue criminal prosecution, which they can, it doesn't become a criminal act. So it's really disheartening to a lot of employers, because they don't quite understand that there's two elements to that someone cannot actually go to jail unless it's pursued on a criminal level for fraud.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, and that's, that's what's interesting is in so many of these cases. I mean, how many of these cases would you say you guys, get requests for, to do surveillance that go this far? Like, what is the percentage, would you say?
Mike, that's a great question. So normally when the cases are referred to us, for the most part, there's some indicator of fraud. We put together a checklist that we give out to our clients of potential indicators of fraud. And generally, if it meets one or two of those parameters, the case gets assigned. And so right away, when it's assigned to us, the probability of potential fraud is there. Now, to the extent of an actual fraud finding by the courts, unfortunately, that's not as easy to secure as video is of someone committing fraud. We get cases day in and day out. We're going to talk about another case, if we have time today, of an alleged COVID claim that happened in the last couple months, where unfortunately some cases are difficult to see to the end. But ultimately, most of the cases that we receive, I would say 70 to 80% that we're handling, we're getting some kind of a contradictory evidence to what they claim that is wrong with them. It's rare that we don't get something on a claimant. It's probably 20 to 25% of the time. Sonny, would you agree with that number?
Yeah, that's a good number. That's a good number, I would say. And yeah, I mean, it's like Mario said, when we're getting these cases assigned to us, there's a component of fraud that the client's feeling. So that's where we try to obtain the information for them, and it can be challenging at times, of course, depending on the timing of the surveillance or how active the claimant is. But that's why it's important to do those things I mentioned earlier, to strategize the best we can to get those results.
Yep. Okay. And so Mario, you mentioned the COVID environment, and I'm actually getting a few messages coming through a direct private chat. But talk a little bit about like the COVID environment. So I mean, obviously, this is the environment we're dealing with now. So how do you think organizations right now are more susceptible to this type of fraud, workers' comp fraud? We're going to pivot in a couple of minutes to unemployment fraud, but just strictly workers' comp fraud. How do you think organizations now are more vulnerable than they were 6 months ago?
Well, obviously, a great question. What's happening now is COVID-19 has changed our entire world globally, as we all know, and so every element of fraud is being examined, and every element of impact to employers is being examined. So prior to COVID-19, it was not a compensable injury. As a matter of fact, it was not even a known potential injury. I mean, if you think about a virus of some sorts, viruses are generally not compensable unless they're related to a specific action at work. Well, specifically in New York, in the last couple of weeks, there's been some guidance put out around various claims that will be compensable, and generally, it's those areas, those industries that have the most susceptibility to public interaction. So things such as corrections officers, law enforcement, first responders, healthcare workers, food service workers, anybody that has direct contact in those environments, unfortunately, are going to be most susceptible, and it's the most difficult to prove because ultimately. It's hard to determine with the way COVID is transmitted, how it's obtained, and whether or not it can be really related to an employer versus perhaps picked up at home or through a party or a gathering. And so it creates a significant conflict. And unfortunately, from my perspective, increases the propensity for fraud because it's very, very difficult to prove. And we see that now with cases coming in regularly from our clients that have first responders that are not willing to return to work, alleging COVID exposure, yet not being clear on how they were exposed, when they were exposed, and the benefits far outweigh the return as far as compensability. They can collect a significant amount of money being out and not return to work.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's and again, that's right up my alley is the psychological aspect of it. So obviously the motivational aspect of that is just.
Sure.
It's a risk reward conundrum. It seems like.
Yep. And it makes the risk not so difficult.
Right. Exactly. So how about like what you're seeing specifically with New York? The regulation in New York. So what's the status as far as the New York claims are
Sure.
concerned?
So, New York State Workers' Comp Board recently issued a directive to New York employers. And essentially, the workers' comp law in New York has very specific requirements around what it does and does not compensate for. So it reimburses really an injured worker's medical treatment for work-related illness or injury. And it's supposed to replace the wages that they would normally secure from working for an employer. It also reimburses for things like funeral expenses in certain regions based upon, someone's exposure. So in New York specifically, prior to this directive, there was no guidelines around whether or not a COVID-19 claim was compensable. And the guidance now provided by the New York State Workers' Comp Board, which we can certainly share in a separate link after this conference, after this TV show, is essentially what they're saying in New York is individuals who work in an environment where exposures are significantly higher are more likely to have compensable COVID-19 claims. And so the Workers' Comp Board is essentially directing employers that they must pay these if the employee can show that they had some kind of exposure and it was work related. And so that puts a whole new twist on employers because ultimately there isn't any one function that you can say is not work related or job related. Any employer has some kind of interaction with others. And so it really creates a real potential opening for fraud, in my opinion, within New York.
Yep, absolutely.
I would agree.
Sonny, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I said I would agree. It's very challenging to determine how they end up getting the virus.
Right, and I think it's so interesting. So what we can do now is we'll pivot a little bit into unemployment fraud, and I think. Again, such a parallel area, because we're both dealing with a population that's vulnerable population, if you will. But so unemployment fraud. It is just running rampant right now. It's we're seeing notices again, Twitter feeds constantly about it. So I want to talk a little bit for the remainder of the show about what's going on with unemployment fraud, and I think. One of the most disturbing, this past week, of course, the Secret Service has been on that big case back. I think it started in I think it was April, and I think last I saw they had. I think in the U.S. they reported about 44 million people that have filed for unemployment, since it started, and I think the Secret Service, again, they identified this huge ring, which had ties, into Nigeria, and was targeting, I think, Washington, North Carolina, Mass, Rhode Island, Oklahoma, Wyoming, and Florida to start. But the fear was that all states were pretty much, vulnerable to this because the way that they were, planning these schemes. So the Secret Service put out all kinds of notices, and I think, the way the scam worked was that they would, there was the imposter scam. So they would, steal identities, legit identity usually, file for unemployment. And then what they would do is they would, instead of that legitimate person getting the funds, they would reroute the funds, to their own account somewhere, of course, overseas somewhere. I think this was the scam, and it's incredible. I mean, I remember, each state, like Michigan's a perfect example, they had like 50,000 reports of fraud, I think, since March in unemployment. And I mean, it was just, just rampant. So I think, when we talk about that type of fraud, right, unemployment fraud, I think, so what does the criminal want from us? What are they trying to get from us as consumers? I mean, they need our personal information, right? So it's, they need our name, our date of birth. I mean, any kind of PII that they can get their hands on. So, you guys in your space, I mean, obviously we do a lot of work in background investigations, background checks, delving into that personal information. I mean, in your experience, over 2 decades working in this space, I mean, as far as the ability to get personal information, I mean, is it harder, easier? Is there different things that have to be done? Are consumers doing a good job, you think, at protecting their identities, or is this something where, we need to do a better job at?
Great questions, Mike. So, with respect to background investigations, they've evolved through the years. When I've been in the industry my entire professional career, actually since childhood, working in a family business, doing private investigative work. And, and since really 9/11, background checks have really taken off as its own industry pre-employment wise. And so when this first started post 9/11, everything was paper forms. Applicants would have to fill out a paper release form, provide their PII on a paper release form. And then ultimately that paper release form would be faxed to multiple parties. It would be used as an authorization form. And so here you have someone's personal information spread about multiple venues. And that all changed in the last several years, I would say in the last 5 to 7 years, where if companies are still using paper forms, it's virtually forbidden. It still can be done, but you're really violating a lot of potential issues with compliance. And so the way that's changed in our industry is there's technology around gathering the PII that makes it so that it's a secure portal. The technology platform that most companies in our space are using are SOC 2 compliant. There's auditing procedures around the SOC 2 compliance to ensure that the information is not breached. And the information that's gathered from pre-employment screening tends to be submitted by the applicant directly. So the applicant has completed the information from their smartphone or their computer. So they're inputting the information to a third-party secure site. And so from that perspective, the information is maintained privately. But switching gears a little bit, when you're thinking about how secure is someone's identity and their information, unfortunately, there's phishing scams that happen every day. We see it in our own industry, in our own office. Matter of fact, Sonny, you told me about one the other day on Friday, where Sonny receives an email from someone. It says it's from Mario Pecoraro. And Sonny, by the way, his real name is Raymond Bollart, but he's been known as Sonny. That's his topic for a different day as far as how he got the name Sonny. So, Sonny, what did the email say that was sent to you that was allegedly from me? What did it say?
Well, honestly, I didn't even have to get into it too far because the first thing they said was, "Hi, Ray." Comment. Mario would never call me Ray, so right there it was squashed right there. But they wanted to. The scam was they want to purchase gift card. Mario wanted to purchase gift cards for employees and blah blah blah. So it was yeah. But again,
So they wanted information out of you, Sonny, as far as specific cell phone information.
Right.
And then sometimes we've seen it where they'll say, hey, can you give us, Mario seems irate. He wants the customer list sent to him. So it'll be a phishing email that comes out. Right. And so people are more on guard now with what they're willing to give out. But ultimately, if the right ruse is used, people are still pretty vulnerable. So I don't believe people are as careful as they should be. They've gotten better. Mm-hmm. And most organizations now are tested regularly. Our team is tested because of compliance to make sure that we're not subjected to those scams. But it doesn't take much for someone to say, oh, they want to be compliant with the boss. Let's give them what they want. Now, from an individual consumer perspective, I think there's a lot of services out there to protect identity. I don't think enough people use them, though. I think, it's very easy for someone to steal someone's identity still today. And it happens on a regular basis. We've even seen a case where one of our coworkers, good friends, had his cell number rerouted for a short period of time. And during that period of time, the scammer got a hold of their bank account information and was able to reroute funds, transfer about $130,000 in funds out of their account. And so people, I think, need to be more sensitive to how their information is used, but at the same time, have good purposes behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just had a great question come up too. I also want to say thanks to, we have Roy Mura. He's listening. So one of our colleagues,
hey, Roy.
Fraud insurance attorney. So welcome, Roy. Please put your comments in there as well. So I just had a question come in too, as far as unemployment scams, what can the public do? And great question. What can the public do to prevent themselves from being, a victim of an imposter claim? And I think most importantly, we fall back on the same tactics and preventative methods as other areas of identity theft, and that would be, make sure you are checking your credit report. I mean, constantly. This is something that needs to be done at a diligent level. To the point that, any anomalies within those forms need to be investigated. So anything that shows up on the radar there. And I think what's really important too is a lot of the, I remember reading an article from the Secret Service. A lot of those data or those scams, those imposter scams, were the result of data breaches that happened prior. Like the Equifax 2017 data breach. Think of all the personal information that is still in circulation. Once a data breach happens, right? We know this. We can just guess, how much PII was put out into the world, but we can never really, we can't just recover that back, and protect it again. So it's still there in circulation in these organized crime rings. And I think that's one thing that people need to keep in mind too, is these large scale data breaches. And if they were in fact maybe a victim of that, there are definitely, higher risk than others. But, to go through those same motions of, identity theft protection, I think will absolutely prevent themselves. Also, too, think about it. If someone, and I've actually heard a couple of cases where those imposter claims, people were filing for legitimate, let's say, Sonny, somebody filed an imposter claim. They would be getting your check. You wouldn't even know it. But every now and then, one of those checks would get routed right to the person by mistake. So, out of the blue, you go to your mailbox, you get an unemployment, a COVID, a pandemic check, whatever it is, not having a clue that you have filed for it. And that's a huge flag right there. Any funds that come in are definitely, definitely suspect that you didn't file for. So I think, if you guys, I don't know if you guys have any tips too for, prevention.
Well, I'd like to add, I can add real quick, Mario?
Sure, please do.
So, we're talking about unemployment, fraud scams, and we're also talking about workers' comp. They kind of commingle together. So now more than ever, employers really need to know who they're hiring. And that's where our important background comes into play. But for example, if now with a lot of unemployed with COVID collecting unemployment checks, they're getting a significant amount of money, right? So they're getting that comfortable lifestyle. So they may not want to go back. They actually may not want to go back and work. If they go back to work, they don't want to work, right? So, for example, employer hires a new employee, and what prevents them from faking an injury at work, right? Now with the weather nice, people are active. they could be working under the table and collecting unemployment. So they could actually get hurt prior to being employed, right? And then they start the job, and then right away they get hurt. They allegedly get hurt on the job. So that's something that employers really want to focus on is backgrounds. I mean, you can piggyback on that, Mario.
Yeah, for sure. Great point, Sonny. And then, that's a good point. Someone is injured outside of before they start the job, right after they start the job, they want to file a claim. And there's some great resources out there that are available to see if someone who's injured, perhaps they've received medications or they've gone to clinics for exams, for doctor's appointments. So there's the ability that we have to actually look at if someone has ever gone into a clinic or a wellness center or some type of a doctor's office, anytime prior to the injury, to see if maybe they injured themselves playing soccer with their friend, or maybe they had some other extracurricular activity. So I think going back to your question, Mike, as we start to wrap up, I think it's important to have some kind of a service that notifies a consumer about whether or not their identity has been breached. I use one service, which is great. I'm not going to endorse one over another, but there's several great services that will notify you anytime there's any activity in your credit. I also recommend that folks be cautious and cognizant to mail delivery and folks, accessing mail. We had, company credit cards delivered to our office a couple weeks ago when we were closed, and the courier service left the company credit cards on the side of the building, and they were here over a weekend day. Luckily, we were able to get those prior to someone stealing them. But it doesn't take much for someone to steal someone's identity if they're not just careful about who's in and out of their business and their personal lives.
No, absolutely. Yep. And I think so important. And as Eric, welcome to you. You mentioned in the chat too, the information's recycled and sold multiple times. This is true. Once you're subject to a breach, it's unfortunate, but that ends up on the black market and recirculated, amongst that crowd. So unfortunately. I see we are 1 minute over. So I have to ask you guys one question, which I always do at the end. Fun fact, Mario. What do we not know about Mario? Give us a fun fact.
So I'm super proud of my Italian upbringing and heritage. So with that being said, two things. One is, I'll give you two fun facts. One is I'm a passionate gardener in the summertime, not for flowers, but for vegetables. So I grow the meanest garlic you'll ever find in the East Coast. And I play the accordion too, which you never suspect growing up Italian, although it's probably not an Italian instrument. So that's two fun facts about me.
Okay, maybe next episode you can entertain us a little bit.
Absolutely, do a little cooking show with some garlic and some and an accordion.
Very nice. And Sonny, we already know one about the name, so I'm going to ask that one.
I want to elaborate on that. I guess two of my favorite places there to be, and actually I can do that in the same day. Be on the water out of my boat. And then drive to the hockey rink and be on the ice. So I love being on the water and then being on the ice. And then one other fun fact is in college I won the Greek Olympic keg toss.
Okay, nice.
Sonny, I don't think they came up in your background check. I don't know. We might need to go back and refresh that.
Exactly.
Very nice.
Backgrounds.
Well, listen, I want to thank you both, Mario and Sonny. How can we reach you guys? Anyone that needs to any information on background checks, investigations, follow up on this stuff?
Sure. We're on all the media channels. We're on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn. Our website is allianceriskgroup.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at AWIG. And then, of course, I'm available as well on Twitter, and it's at Mario AWIG, and certainly be glad to answer any questions or share further information.
Fantastic. Well, Sonny, Mario, thank you both very much. Also like to thank everyone that attended. Please keep those questions coming in. On my end, for DFTV, thank you for joining, and please let us know whatever episodes that you might have in mind. If you want to be a guest, like I said, we're booking into the fall, so please just send me a message. You can also reach me. You guys know how to find me: LinkedIn, Twitter, and all other places too. So have a great day, everyone, and thanks for joining.
Thank you, Michael.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.